Hello and welcome to the Football News Zone, the show we round up all the biggest stories in the beautiful game right now. The end of the Premier League season is later today, but which stories have been catching our attention this week? This week we examine why Leicester City could be heading for a points deduction next season, we preview the Premier League's final day today, and some Tottenham fans, believe it or not, are actually calling for Ange to be sacked. That is despite winning the Europa League earlier this week. Crackers, but we go into all of that and a whole lot more in today's show. If you're watching on YouTube, skip to the timestamp in the video to watch the story that you are most interested in. So without further ado, let's dive in. So I was driving around this morning as usual, listening to the radio, and there's been some absolutely interesting opinions being shared about Ange Postecoglou on the radio this morning. Now, of course, Tottenham Hotspur won the Europa League last night. They beat Manchester United 1-0 in Bilbao to win their first trophy in 17 years. It's been that long. There's genuinely going to be some Spurs fans that have never even known their side to win a trophy of any kind. It's their first European trophy in 41 years, I remember them saying as well. So there's a very large chunk of Spurs fans that have never seen their side lift a European Cup before they managed to win the Europa League last night. But despite that, some Spurs fans are still calling for Ange Postecoglou's head. They want to sack him, and I think that is absolutely laughable. How can you get rid of this guy? He's just won you your first trophy in nearly 20 years. He's got you back into the Champions League. Now, to play devil's advocate for these Spurs fans, I think they're just looking at the league table and just being like, well, it's been terrible in the league. We've been awful for the most part. Therefore, he's got to go. And you are right. In the Premier League, it has been absolutely terrible. They're probably going to finish in 17th position. The points that they are currently on, 38, is enough usually to get relegated. It's just that the bottom three this season have been absolutely abysmal once again, so that's very much saved Tottenham's skin. But there's a few different factors to this really. When it became clear that Spurs were unable to challenge for a European place in the league, very much all of Ange's eggs were placed in the European basket, and he put all the emphasis on the Europa League. It almost seemed like he was resting players in the Premier League to be able to be better in the Europa League, and it paid off because they won a trophy. Can I just emphasize that a little bit more? Spurs, Tottenham Hotspur, the perennial bottle jobs in football, won a trophy. So you know what that means? They're not bottle jobs anymore. No, they've won something. That tag is gone. You cannot say that about them now. They performed well enough to win the Europa League in the final. I cannot stress that enough. How many great Spurs teams have come close to winning trophies before and not managed it? Much better Tottenham Hotspur side, making the EFL Cup final in, 2020 under Mourinho, 2021, something like that. Sacking him right on the eve of that. Do you want to do something like that again? Do you want to go back to being the laughingstock of English football? Because Manchester United are that right now. That's been passed to them very much at the moment. Do you want to go back to being that? You're Tottenham Hotspur. You're not serial winners of trophies. And when that happens, you got to back your manager. You have to. Now, I do get the point as well that Daniel Levy might well just sit on this and say, well, we've got a good team. We've won a European trophy. We don't need to invest in the squad. But that's not Ange's fault. Ange should not be sacked for the incompetence of the board. That's not what should happen. That does happen sometimes in football. Of course, we've seen it many, many times in the past, but that's not what should really be happening here. You know, I mean, look, Pochettino, right? Pochettino was a fantastic manager with Tottenham. Got them to the Champions League final. Got them to second place, I think, in the Premier League, or at least third anyway. You know, pretty consistently in the Champions League on league merit form, but he won nothing. He won nothing. And football is about trophies. When you're talking about these top six clubs, football is about trophies. Newcastle, right? They did fantastically well a couple of seasons ago to finish in third place or fourth place or whatever it was, right? They did incredibly well. That was huge for them. Making it back into the Champions League was a huge deal for the Geordie boys. But what was a bigger deal? Making the Champions League or winning the League Cup? I'd say it was winning the League Cup. Honestly, that's a much bigger deal for them. And yes, they will probably do both this season, get both into the Champions League, and obviously they've already won silverware. But my point being is that it's been so long since Spurs have actually won a trophy. They've managed to do it under Ange. He's kept his word. Yes, he should be backed. And if he's not backed in the transfer market this summer, it could well be an ugly start to next season. But that's not Ange's fault. You don't go sacking him. You don't go pre-sacking him for the incompetence of the board, not investing in the club. That's not his fault. So to say that Ange should either walk, or which is just insane, or be sacked, which is almost as insane, is just beyond belief. I cannot believe there is a contingent of Spurs fans that are saying this. You know, you've won more trophies this season than Arsenal. You've won more trophies this season than Manchester City. Is that not something to celebrate? I think it is, and you're going to celebrate it when you go for your open-top bus parade, which, by the way, absolutely go for. I don't know why people are taking the mick out of Spurs going for an open-top bus parade for getting their first trophy in 17 years. Do it. Celebrate. Have a good time. Arsenal probably would have had one for the FA Cup when they won that about 5 years ago if it wasn't for the pandemic, so you can't go telling me they don't deserve it. Honestly, it's ridiculous. It's going to be interesting to see how Spurs do in the Champions League next season, but with how good they've been in Europe, how good they've been in the Europa League on the whole, why not? Why would they not be able to get through to the knockouts? Why would they not be able to challenge? Spurs on their day are really bloody good. It's just that the day is very inconsistent. But when it comes to actually getting players in and getting a squad that is ready to challenge, they can absolutely do that. Will they do it? I won't hold my breath for Levy, I'll be honest, but that's not Ange's fault. He can only play hands with the cards that he's dealt, and you know he's been playing hands of poker with 2 cards this whole season. The amount of injuries they've had has been absolutely obscene. And yeah, you can blame Ange for his training routines because of that, but still, it's been an absolute freak season for that by anybody's standards with Spurs. But yeah, your thoughts in the comments below, guys. For me, it's an absolute no-brainer. It's like when they were talking about Leeds sacking Daniel Farke after winning the championship. Why? He's gotten promoted. He's won the league. That's insane. The fact the board's having to come out and publicly say, yeah, he's our man. He's our man. We're backing him. I think that just tells you all you need to know about modern football. It really, really does. But anyway, rant over. Your thoughts in the comments below, guys. Ange in or Ange out? For me, it's not even a question. Ange in. Keep him. He's won you a trophy. God almighty. See you soon for much more content on the world of football like this. The weird and wacky world of football, as I like to say. So, Leicester City find themselves in a bit of hot water right now. Of course, they've been relegated from the Premier League with an absolute whimper, as have all the promoted sides from last season's championship, of course. But off the pitch, they're in a bit of hot water as well. It's not looking too great. They are potentially facing a points deduction after their relegation from the Premier League. Now, if you remember before this season even started, there were heavy rumours that Leicester were going to get a points deduction, and they managed to get out of that being their fate, basically on a technicality. They somehow argued that the EFL were trying to charge them during the Premier League and didn't have the jurisdiction to do so. And then the Premier League were trying to charge them for their time in the EFL, something weird like that. It was really strange. They got on an absolute technicality. How they avoided a points deduction, I do not know. That loophole has apparently now been closed, though, and they are facing more penalties as a result. So let's have a look, guys. Full article here on The Guardian. Shout out to these guys for covering this because, yeah, Leicester will, of course, be wanting to bounce straight back to the top flight after being relegated, but this could very much hurt their chances of doing so, and it also might explain as well, potentially, just my own personal theory, about why Jamie Vardy is leaving. Of course, Vardy is on a lot of money, and I think he would have been an excellent striker for them next season in the Championship, but maybe now, because of these financial penalties that are coming, they can't afford him anymore. Just my theory, you know, Fox's legend for sure, no matter what, but I think there's definitely a possibility that is what's happened here. So let's have a look what's happened, guys. Leicester City face a potential points deduction in the Championship next season after the Premier League charged the club with breaching profitability and sustainability rules. This is one of 3 alleged breaches relating to the 2023-24 season when Leicester won promotion to the top flight, which have been referred to an independent commission. So for those that don't know in English football, there is now an independent commission for this, a third party, as it were, separate to the clubs themselves and the league organisers too. There is now a separate body that decides these kinds of things. That's been brought in literally in the last 12 months or so. It's a very recent change. Relegated Leicester will play in the second tier next season, but updated rules stipulate a penalty can be administered at any time after an independent panel found last year that the Premier League had no jurisdiction to charge them for allegedly breaching the PSR threshold in 22-23. Leicester had argued they could not be punished by the Premier League because they had not been relegated to the Championship when their accounting period ended on the 30th of June. That was it. That was the technicality they got off with. Clever. Very clever. The wily old foxes, eh? A tribunal ended the dispute over the 22-23 accounts, but Leicester are now facing charges relating to the following season. Leicester are also alleged to have breached the club's obligation to provide their annual accounts to the Premier League by the 31st of December 2024 and to provide full, complete and prompt assistance to the league in response to its inquiries. Leicester say they will engage cooperatively in this matter. An English Football League spokesperson said the EFL notes that the Premier League has today referred Leicester City to an independent commission for an alleged breach of profit and sustainability rules for the period ending 23-24. The EFL commenced an investigation into this reporting period following the March 2024 submissions, and as is permitted in accordance with EFL regulations, jurisdiction for that is passed to the Premier League at the conclusion of the 23-24 season on the club's promotion. We will now await the outcome of the Premier League proceedings and until then are not able to comment any further on this matter. So the quickest way to summarise that is basically during Leicester's previous promotion campaign, when they got promoted to the Premier League, the season before this one, they are alleged to have gone over PSR regulations, gone over that 115 million loss for 3 seasons. So therefore, if they are found guilty of this, they could get a points deduction, just like Everton did, just like Nottingham Forest did as well. And by the sounds of things, going off of those quotes on that article as well, it may well be a very big punishment, more akin to what we saw with Everton at first, because it does seem as though Leicester are not being very forthcoming with their breaches in terms of like providing information. It sounds like they're putting roadblocks up, a bit like Manchester City. I mean, what's happening with Man City, by the way? Just a quick mention to that. That has gone so quiet. What is going on with that case? I thought we were meant to get a verdict pretty soon. But anyway, they'll escape punishment. They'll get a slap on the wrist. Let's be real here, guys. Man City are too big to punish. The English football authorities, though, will happily hand Leicester a huge points deduction. They just will. That's what they want to do, probably. So we'll see what happens, guys. Any kind of updates, I will bring you here. And it's entirely possible as well that even if Leicester get a 10-point deduction, let's just say, just for argument's sake, they may still get promoted anyway. You know, the advantage of the relegated sides from the Premier League with these parachute payments coming down to the Championship. As my club knows, I'm not judging these clubs for it. It's just the reality of the situation. You know, the advantage they have is absolutely huge over the rest of the field. Look at how high Sheffield United, Burnley and Leeds were this season. 100 points for Burnley and Leeds and like 90 odd for us below them. It's ridiculous the advantage that teams that get relegated from the Prem have. Although of course Luton only just escaped relegation, so it's not a silver bullet for every team. But your thoughts in the comments below. So the final day of the Premier League, match day 38 out of 38 is being played this weekend. Sunday 4 PM UK time kickoff for all 20 teams. 10 matches, all 20 clubs in action. And in truth, the only thing that's really mattering with all of these games is the race for Europe and which of the competitions these sides near the top of the league are going to be in next season. The title battle has been done and dusted for quite some time. Arsenal, they will be in the Champions League. But aside from that, at the top of the league, Manchester City, Newcastle United, Chelsea, Aston Villa, Nottingham Forest, all battling out for Europe, and potentially, in theory, the team in 8th as well, which is currently Brighton and Hove Albion. It could be Brentford, depends on how the final game goes, but one of those two could be in for a Conference League spot. I'll explain how that's actually possible. Now, of course, at the bottom of the league, the teams at the bottom 3, they've been relegated for quite some time. That's not going to change. Crystal Palace, they will be in the Europa League next season. They won the FA Cup. And this is your warning as well. I am just recording this literally after the Europa League final between Manchester United and Tottenham Hotspur. This is your final warning. If you don't want to hear what happened in that one, do go, of course, and look at my review, which should be out already on the channel. But I'll just tell you the results of that. Tottenham Hotspur managed to win that, so they are in the Champions League. But the rest of the spots are yet to be decided. Now, I did give a quick mention there that it's possible for the team in 8th to make European football for the Premier League for next season. And that can only happen if Chelsea win the Conference League, which they probably will, to be honest, despite the complaints of Enzo Maresca and the lack of time between their final match in the Prem and their final match of the season for, of course, the Conference League. But if they finish in 7th in the Premier League, and win the Conference League, that'll mean that they get a Europa League spot. So that means that Conference League spot that's meant to go to Newcastle, but of course they will probably be in the Champions League at this rate. At least that means that Conference League spot, which is attached to Newcastle United, but of course it will get pushed down in that scenario. They will go down. That all means that the team in 7th in this case. Now, it is possible for the team in 8th, like I said, to get into Europe, and that would only be for a Conference League spot. And there's only one way that can happen, and that is if Chelsea finish in 7th, which is possible. It's definitely possible given where the table is right now and the way those final day results have worked out. They, of course, play Nottingham Forest, who are currently in 7th, so it's definitely possible that Chelsea could slide down there. Now, they would need to finish in 7th, and they would also have to win the Conference League, which they will probably do so. It's not a dead cert. I mean, they're playing against Real Betis. You would expect them to beat them, but Betis are not a bad side in fairness. But yeah, that was what would happen there, because then 7th, instead of being a Conference League spot, that would be a Europa League spot, and the Conference League spot, which is attached to Newcastle for winning the EFL Cup, that would get pushed down to 8th place. So that would mean that either Brighton and Hove Albion or Brentford, probably Brighton looking at the table right now, a 3-point gap between those two, although of course if Brighton lose and Brentford win, then they would swap positions and Brentford would go in their first ever European campaign. I mean, it'd be huge for Brighton. They've only ever had one before a couple seasons ago. But yeah, so it's possible. It's unlikely, but it's definitely possible. But let's have a look at the final day fixtures. Let's try and predict them all. I mean, or at least all the ones that have something riding on them anyway. I mean, like Arsenal and Southampton, that doesn't really have anything riding on it. Southampton are down. Arsenal, of course, already in the Champions League. But we'll go in the order. That these teams are being shown as here. So, Bournemouth and Leicester, there's nothing really riding on that. Leicester already relegated. Bournemouth unable to get into Europe. So I'll skip past that. Fulham against Manchester City. Now, you know, I remember the game between these two being very tight at the Etihad. I think it was a 1-0 or like a 3-2 victory for Man City. I think they did win, but it was tight. There wasn't a lot between them. Now, Fulham, of course, have been a real disruptor in the Premier League this season. They managed to beat Liverpool not that long ago. They've been a bit hit and miss recently, though. They aren't able to get into European football. They can't quite get up to that 8th place. They would be on 57 if they managed to win against Man City. But Brighton would be still on at least 58 at that point. Man City, now, realistically, they are going to be in the Champions League this season coming up. It's very unlikely they're going to drop out and go into the Europa League. It's possible. Newcastle, Chelsea, and Villa would all have to win in that situation. Forest, if they win, they can't really overtake Manchester City because it's, the goal difference is too much there. 13 difference between them. So that's not going to happen. So Man City are confirmed for at least the Europa League. I think they will probably win this game, though, to be honest. I think it's going to be tight. I think it's going to be awkward. I'm going to go for my favourite scoreline of 2-1 to Man City. So I think Man City are going through. That is absolutely my prediction there with that one. But let's have a look at the other games. So, Wolves against Brentford. There is something riding on this. Like I said, Brentford, if they win, they will go into Europe. Potentially. As long as Brighton lose and that thing happens with Chelsea. So it's possible for them. Now, Wolves had been on an incredible run. But as soon as they got mathematically safer, not too long after that anyway, they started losing games. They didn't look particularly great against Crystal Palace, a Palace side that is fresh of winning the FA Cup in their previous match day. They've also had less time to prepare than Brentford, I do believe. I think Brentford played at the weekend. I don't think they had a midweek game, did they not? Yes, there we go, they did. They played against Brighton and they managed to win actually as well. Huge win for them there with that one. So, I'm going to go for the Bees to do it, I'm going to go for them to win. I think Wolves are on the holidays. They're on the beach. They've got the deck chairs out. So I'm going to go for them to win. Again, favourite scoreline, 2-1. Now, Nottingham Forest and Chelsea. Oh, man. This is going to be tight for sure. Now, what was the result between these two earlier in the season? I genuinely cannot remember off the top of my head. Where are they? 1-1 between them. 1-1. And this was when Chelsea were just starting to get a bit of momentum at the earlier parts of the season. And down to 10 men as well. Oh, man, this is a tough one to predict this. This really is. Forest have been sliding, but they managed to arrest their slump against West Ham. West Ham are hopeless. They've been on poor form, losing against Brentford at home, drawing against Leicester. Palace away as a draw. That's not a bad result in fairness, but Tottenham Hotspur away, they won. Everybody beat Spurs, though, let's be honest, apart from Man United very recently, of course. Eat my words immediately with that one. Man, this is going to be a tough one to predict. This is so tough. But you know what? I'm going to go bold. I want to see it. I want to see Nottingham Forest maybe get into the Champions League. I'm going to go for them to win. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go bold. I'm going to go brave. 3-2. I'm going to go for a very entertaining game to Nottingham Forest to win. So that put them on 68 points. Chelsea stay on 66. But do they drop out as a result? Well, they will do. Yeah, of course they will. They will drop out the Champions League spots with that. But do Nottingham Forest get into them? Well, it depends on what happens with Aston Villa. Oh, they're playing Man United away. Oh, they're going to win. They're going to win 2-0 to Aston Villa. That's a very easy one to predict. Yeah, unfortunately, that would not be enough for Nottingham Forest to get through to the Champions League. That puts them into the Europa League. And also, that means that Chelsea come away with Newcastle as well. Newcastle, therefore, would qualify for the Champions League as well. That would mean that Chelsea drop out and down into 7th, like the exact scenario I talked about. So there's a few things still to decide here. So who are Brighton playing? Tottenham away. Oh, they're going to win. Or are they going to win? Oh, I was so sure before, but of course Spurs managed to win the Europa League, didn't they? But how Spursy would it be for them to lose 17th and get Champions League qualification? Oh my God. So yeah, I'll go for Brighton. 2-1. So that would mean that the Seagulls go back to Europe in this situation. As long as Chelsea win the Conference League final, which I believe they will. Chelsea, I don't know. They can't rest players, though. They can't rest players. I was going to say they'll go easy. They can't rest players. That's not going to happen. That is a silly thing to suggest. And also, Newcastle there. Yeah, Newcastle beat Everton. Everton are a bit hopeless right now. Again, they're on the beach. Deck chairs out. New stadium in the new season. Yeah, they beat Southampton the other day, but who doesn't beat Southampton? Everybody wins against them. So basically, when it comes to the European race, I'm going for Man City to win, Brentford to win, Nottingham Forest to beat Chelsea, Villa to beat Man United, and Newcastle to beat Everton, as well as Spurs losing to Brighton. So that means on this table, obviously we knew that Liverpool and Arsenal were in the Champions League. They will be joined by Manchester City, Newcastle United, and Aston Villa. Nottingham Forest would be in the Europa League. Chelsea, if they win the Conference League, would be in the Europa League. If they don't, they would be in the Conference League next season. And obviously, the knock-on of that, if Chelsea win the Conference League, Brighton go back to Europe as well. So that is my prediction. 10 teams, half of the division sides next season will be in European competition. 6 in the Champions League, 3 in the Europa League, and 1 in the Conference League. So those are my thoughts, guys, on how the final day is going to shake out for all those games that are actually meaning something in terms of something to play for Europe. What are your thoughts on this? Do you agree with my picks for who is going to make it through to the Champions League, the Conference League, and the Europa League? Your thoughts in the comments below. I appreciate all your inputs as always, and we'll see you soon for more content on the world of football just like this. Have a fantastic day wherever you are in the world today, guys, and we'll see you very soon.